Hey everybody, I'm Ben Higgins.
Hey, I'm Serena Pitt.
Hey, this is Blake Moynes.
Hi, this is Alana Milne.
Hey, I'm Lindsay Hamilton.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
This is The Bros Ceremony.
Your journey's about to begin.
Recapping the week that was in Bachelor Nation and previewing what's to come in the next episode with some special betting odds.
Everyone can't wait to find out what happens next week.
Here are your hosts, Michael the Hound Dog Harrison and Adam Scully.
Will you accept this rose?
Will you accept this rose?
Will you accept this rose?
Let's let our love run wild. Hello and welcome inside episode 19 of the Bros Ceremony podcast. Adam Scully alongside Michael the Hound Dog Harrison. And Michael, we're going to get into it in in-depth detail, but things got a little spicy on this week's episode of The Bachelor.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. The early on in the episode was fantastic when they all went, of course, on the vulnerable date about sex and stuff, basically. You know,
the vulnerable date about sex and stuff.
It was like the good description, right? It's like 5 minutes into the episode, they're talking about it. It's like, well, okay, they're not messing around with this episode. So, yeah, it was 8 guys or something along those lines. They decided to have a little chat and have to talk to Katie about that. And of course, there was we'll get into him in a bit here. There's the Mike guy who's a virgin who's uncomfortable with it. What'd you think of that whole process, as it were, Adam?
The whole process. I mean, first off, before we get into that date, I always find it funny into the first or second episode, all the guys are best friends and bonding and, oh, we're in this together. Yeah. And like, they're all just, oh, this is where we're living. Unreal, sick. And then, in like 20 minutes, they're all going to hate each other. Yep. I find that funny. That's
a good point. Very, very good point. Yeah. As we saw in this episode, the drama started pretty soon thereafter. And like I said, that date was quite interesting. There was some trivia questions they had on there that I didn't know the answers to, and clearly some of the men didn't know the answers to that as well. The one that I found fascinating was I think it was something along the lines of the longest sex organ was your brain. It was your brain. And I was like, oh, dang, I didn't even think about it that way.
Well, I guess, if you think about it, like the thought process, the mental aspect of it, that's the only thing I can go to. That wouldn't be the answer I would have given. But
no, I definitely wouldn't have said that either. I love that you said, if you think about it, and while thinking about it, you're using your brain, which is your largest sex organ. So there you go. It was it worked out perfectly there. So, but yeah, no, it was an interesting date. So yeah, there was those questions, and then of course, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of your guys, the cat guy, whatever his name is, Connor. Yeah, he had performed a song, and she seemed to love it.
You know what? As we mentioned in episode 18 of the Bro Ceremony podcast right here on YouTube, we mentioned Katie, big cat girl, loves her cats. Connor showed up with the cat costume on. We'll get into this later, but when they had their little one-on-one time after, he was saying, like, do I still look okay without the cat stuff on? Do you recognize me? Do you still like me? I thought that was pretty funny. You can tell he's very musically inclined as well with the guitar, and then he had a little piano going. So good on him. I find it always funny too. So they had Heather McDonald, the sex comedian. Didn't know sex comedy was an actual job title, but here we are.
Sex with Sue. Do you remember? You're probably too young to remember her. She was she would take phone calls from people way back in the day on their show for many, many years, maybe 30 years or something like that. Not that I ever watched it or anything like that.
That was my follow-up question. Did you ever call in?
I never called in. I think I went in her heyday. I think she's maybe retired for the last 15 years, I think, because I was Googling her the other day. She's like in her 90s. Good for her. In my heyday, it was like, a teenager. So I think that might have been a little bit awkward if I had called her when I was like 15 or something.
Yeah, that might have been a little weird, but Heather McDonald, the sex comedian, helping everyone out with Katie, of course, the dream team duo of Tayshia and Caitlin, also there sitting with Katie, as all of these guys had their different ways of doing things. And we'll get to Mike momentarily, but Trey stood out to me with the puppets. I thought that was a pretty funny way.
Man, Trey, I love Trey.
Trey's the man, but okay, Karl stole the show in this episode for a multitude of different reasons. He had a lot of comparisons to sports games, the shot clock's counting down, or we got to stay in the game here. It's like, Karl, like you know, and we'll get into the nonsense that happened later on in the episode, but even his speech, his little spiel, if you will, went on for what seemed like hours, and the guys were almost booing him and saying, "Get off the stage." Karl, not so much liked in those.
I just love the fact that he's a motivational speaker. So it's just so funny to me. He's a motivational speaker, yet no one is motivated by anything he's saying. I just think that's hilarious. He's obviously been the break. I saw signs of it in episode 1. Clearly, so far anyway, the breakout star in terms of the villain of the season, which I love. Every season has to have one. And so far, yeah, without question. And yeah, his date that he was on or whatever. I can't even remember exactly what he did. So clearly, it wasn't that amazing. But I do remember the tone of it being, as you mentioned, sort of awkward and like off-putting.
Yeah, and you know, it was the classic, like, you can tell he's a motivational speaker. He picks up the mic and says, "Hey, how y'all doing tonight?" And they've been sitting there for 2 hours already. Like, come on, dude. Maybe pump the brakes there a little bit. But yeah, he had some sort of board he was throwing off. He had like 5 or 6 of them throwing onto a bed or something.
Oh yeah, that was odd. Yeah.
Weird. It was all very strange. But we mentioned Mike, and Mike seems like an early fan favorite, if you will, because, you know, going into this, he's already mentioned to the camera crew, and not to Katie yet. America knows, Canada knows, the world knows, but Katie does not yet know, at the time, of course, that he is a virgin. And obviously, given the magnitude of the date and the topic and subject of the date, he was quite uncomfortable with this. But instead of saying some nonsense or BS, he brought Katie onto the stage and read her a letter that moved Katie, and it was very heartwarming.
Yeah, actually, really, really good. I love that she at least initially says she loves him for that. And not loves him, but like loves that he did that.
Right.
We'll see if that actually plays a part later on. Like, she may say that was sweet and it was wonderful, but when it gets down to the nitty gritty, does she actually like him for being a virgin? Considering she, you know, I don't know, maybe she won't. But I lost my train of thought. There's something I was gonna say about how the fact that it's he did that. Oh yeah, that's what it was. That it's what are the odds that, of course, like I said, there was 7 or 8 guys on this date. Obviously, the producers want to shoehorn him into that date because it'd be amazing because he's a virgin, the whole, you know, double entendre, as it were, of that. Like, what are the odds of her being like, actually, I don't want to have Mike on that date, whatever we're doing? They're like, no, Mike is going to be on that date. Like, they actually demanded her doing that because it's just funny to me. Coincidentally, all these episodes, whenever something like that happens, they just happen to be the person, you know, or remember a couple of years ago when Victoria, I think it was her name was Victoria. She was Chase said she was engaged to this guy Chase, and she was happened to be on that date. He happens to be there, and she was uncomfortable. It's amazing all these coincidences is what I'm saying. I know that was a ramble, but it's amazing all the coincidences that happen in the show. It's incredible.
I'd more call that a rant and not a ramble, but
that was a ramble. Maybe we're trying to combine the 2 words, but basically combining ramble and rant is rant. So
that's right. But you know, this goes to what we've said, you know, thousands of times on this very program, is that the way the Bachelor producers and everyone sets it up, they're setting it up for entertainment for people like you and me and people from coast to coast, whether you're in the Nunavut or you're in New Zealand. When you're tuning in, you want to have the top entertainment value, and Mike is, you know, relatable to a lot of people watching this who are saving themselves for marriage. So good for him for being honest, for being vulnerable. So that was the group portion of said date. We'll get to our vulnerable count a little later in the show as well, because again, you'd be surprised, not as many as you thought. I'm a little, I mean, maybe it's early on, maybe they're just getting used to it. They don't quite have the teleprompter set up yet in front of them for all the dates. But yeah, so the vulnerable count was a little lower. But then afterwards, they all have their time with Katie. And one of the guys I know we're both very high on in terms of how far he's going to go in the show, Thomas, gets the kiss and gets the rose.
I know Thomas we talked about how he was the first guy out of the limo.
He's about 7 feet tall. Yeah.
And he said vulnerable, but I'm not as high on him as you are in terms of wanting him to necessarily succeed. A guy that obviously clearly is winning over the hearts of everyone in America so far is Greg, who she loves, gave him the, I believe, first impression rose.
Yes.
And then the first date with him as well. So she clearly seems to be quite head over heels with him thus far.
seems to be quite head over heels over a couple of guys already. When Connor and Katie, first of all, Connor asked for another kiss.
I remember
That's a
thinking
little
of it.
squeamish to me, but hey, it certainly worked out. But then Katie said afterward, "We are meant to be." What?
Man, can you imagine like Claire Karl even before she just stops the season again and has another season where that happens? That'd be fantastic. It's obviously not going to happen, but that'd be amazing.
I mean, they did say, in some speculation that the season ended earlier, so maybe it ends next week. I mean, nobody really knows. I guess only time will tell. But you mentioned Greg. So Greg was given the first one-on-one after getting the first impression rose. He even said that he was shocked by this, and I know some of the guys might have been a little not so happy about that, but hey, he got the rose. Well, he eventually did get a rose, but he got the one-on-one. And before we get into the date, I don't know, Michael, we're both NHL fans. We follow the game for a living. I think he looks like Brandon Dubinsky. I don't know about you, but I think he's Brandon Dubinsky.
Interesting. Usually I have a lot of guys lined up where I'm like, oh, this guy looks like this guy, or this woman looks like this woman. And I don't have many. I do have one that I was saving for later, but perhaps I'll just say it now. The only one that I'm really strong, Dubinsky, and I'd have to actually see Dubinsky again, side by side, because I haven't actually thought about that one. But the one I did notice was the single dad, Michael, who's I believe 36 years old,
Yep.
and TSN's own Matthew Shinetti was was the one I noticed. That's the Google that one, folks, and that's the one I believe. But yeah, the Dubinsky one, I'll have to take a look on that one. I love when I hit your giggle, your funny bone there, Adam. I love when you love to laugh too.
Clearly, we don't rehearse these shows. That was quite funny. I like that a lot. But anyway, so Greg gets the one-on-one, and they go on this sort of fishing date. Katie picks him up in this red pickup truck. They have these matching sort of jackets on, which is really cute. Wasn't planned, but come on. So they go on this fishing date. Now, Michael, you've been on a number of fishing, probably not dates, but trips in your life. Have you ever dug a hole, put a garbage can, cut off the top, and used that as a toilet?
Yeah, up until the pandemic times, every February I would go on ice fishing for a couple days with a bunch of guys, and 5 or 6 guys. But 5 or 6 guys, and that was a good time. I don't even really particularly care all that much about fishing. It's fine, but it's more about the having a good time, having a few drinks and all that stuff. The camaraderie, exactly. They do have an outhouse there, but I haven't actually dug the hole in it like they did on that program. We probably should though, because that outhouse, even though you go outside to go into it at the ice fishing, it is shockingly absolutely rank within like 5 minutes because everyone's there, and you basically smell it through the walls of your shack. So it's pretty bad. So that would actually be a good idea for us to do what they did, which was cut a hole. But yeah, it's pretty smelly. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. But then they actually had a nice moment sitting on their respective toilets, and they kissed. I thought, as they were laughing, it's like, Katie just seems, I don't know, you know what? Like, I wish I was on this season. I got to say, I mean, Katie seems pretty brilliant.
I've mentioned before, you should be on the show, and you're like, I don't even know why exactly. You're like, I'm not really so much wanting to be on The Bachelor. Well, here you go, Adam. Maybe you should have listened to me, and perhaps you would have been on Katie's season. So that is on you. But yeah, they definitely bonded over the fact, unfortunately, both their fathers have passed away, and they certainly seem to be connected with that. And before they, earlier in the date, one of the takeaways I had was he sort of struggled with setting up the tent, which I thought was funny because, of course, there's a euphemism that he struggled pitching a tent, but I just thought of that one right now.
Whoa.
I'm just saying that you could look into it that way, but I just find it funny because if I was left to my own devices and you have to set up this tent, I would also be horrible. I would have no idea what's going on. I'd be awful, guaranteed.
It's a good thing we've never gone camping together, because I too am abysmal at setting up a tent.
Yeah, not the most handyman ever. It's probably something that I should put on my resume or online to get on The Bachelor. It's probably not, but it's the truth. Not so good at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Michael, you have many other strengths. You can't be perfect. You can't be good at everything. Come on, man. But you mentioned, and Greg and Katie did have this heartfelt moment where Katie was talking about her father when they were sitting still on the fishing date, and Greg was consoling her, but he wasn't opening up totally yet. And then they go on this, they have their supper after and with a glass of red wine or whatever in hand. And then, Katie's getting emotional again. And then Greg says, hey, 2 years ago, my father also died. So he was having a lot of trouble keeping it together, to put it bluntly. But the fact that she was there, consoling him, helping him get through was because obviously it's just an incredibly difficult moment. Katie's father passed away 9 years ago. His was 2 years ago. But, there is quite a bond between Katie and Greg, and it's great to see.
It feels real. Like, as we've talked about through 2 episodes, she does seem like a really cool, wonderful woman. And it feels more real than other seasons, at least in my opinion, thus far. That she actually does seem to have like legitimate. I know she's only seen these guys for a little bit, but she actually does seem to be making some connections here, which is really cool. Yeah. Like I said, from the episode 1 from the last season, I think Katie's gonna be a star. And guess what? I was correct on that. She's been awesome so far. Bang.
I mean, like I said, you're not perfect, but you do have a lot of good takes. That, my dear friend, was a very good take. And we mentioned as well, I don't know if this was over text or over on the show. I honestly can't remember. We said over under 1.5 episodes to see fireworks. We saw fireworks after their day. They had Katie had a little surprise set up on the hatchback of the pickup truck. Hatchback, is that? Yeah, hatchback of the pickup truck. Fireworks. You love to see it.
And again, there's more euphemisms or what's the word I'm looking for? Symbolism. There's more symbolism there with the fireworks, with all that. So I love their little things like that on the show. Do you want to talk about, by the way, Aaron and Cody, the feud of these two guys here?
You know what? I was just getting there, Michael. Chronologically just going through the show. And before we get to the Aaron and Cody feud, have you ever been woken up by pots and pans by a rather dynamic duo before?
I have never had that. Of course, I'm sure they obviously knew that was going to happen, is my assumption. But no, I have never. And again, just go, no clothes on at all. Just go as you are. Just like, oh, okay, that seems a bit random. I have not had that before, though. I think that'd be quite funny.
I think it'd be quite funny. I personally have not had that as well. But quite a wake up for the boys, bright and early for the next group date, Katie's Big Buckle Brawl, where the guys were mud wrestling essentially. And, whoa, I almost knocked my mic over there. Technology not going so hot. And, the guys who were picked to go against each other it was kind of fun and games. Obviously, they're sort of hurling each other around a little bit. But then Aaron and Cody, like you mentioned, and like, Tasha and Caitlin were both saying, and Katie was saying too, like, they're not making eye contact right now. They're not looking at each other. And they went at it.
It's so funny how they just happen to be noticing these things, that they didn't like each other, like they weren't informed in any way, shape, or form beforehand. Hilarious. By the way, you mentioned Tasha and Caitlin.
I did.
First episode, I said there's times I thought they were really quite annoying. I didn't love their performance. I actually thought they were really good this episode. I almost forgot about Uncle Chris Harrison pretty quickly, which I didn't think I would. But which is ironic because I was talking to a girl and she's like, "Oh, they're so annoying with their cowbells and all this stuff." This episode, and it's so funny to me how I flipped on that. I'm like, no, they're quite good. And now I'm starting to hear from people that they don't like them, which is kind of interesting to me. But yeah, the fact that we happen to notice that these two aren't getting along. Like a producer in your ear was telling you about that. Oh, what a shock! But very, very, very weird that feud, the dynamic between Aaron and Cody, and obviously when they said they didn't like each other and they mud wrestled, as you mentioned. Cody didn't exactly do a good job of rebutting the fact that this Aaron guy said he was not there for the right reasons.
Yeah, when Aaron told Katie about their little feud, and then Katie being an all-star, as soon as the cocktail party starts, takes Cody aside, and he didn't deny anything. He was sort of like, okay, like he was being really, obviously he was stunned to hear it, but he wasn't saying, no, I'm not. He wasn't doing that at all. And again, good for Katie. She said, Cody, He go.
Well,
Set him
here's
home.
the thing with that, Adam. I was all set to write down, oh, he probably didn't wear a seatbelt in his exit interview, right? But they didn't show him in that exit interview, which was
Oh,
interesting to me because, in my opinion, akin to on TV for a sporting event, when there's a streaker on the field, they never show the streaker because it's like they want to have that exposure. They want to be on TV. They want to be seen. So oftentimes, almost never, will directors actually show this streaker doing what is they're doing to get the attention. They didn't give Cody that platform because probably they were right that he wasn't there for the right reasons. I thought it was very interesting. They didn't even give him a chance to talk there. Presumably they did give him an exit interview, but they didn't show it at all. So I thought it was very, very much akin to that. By the way, word up, akin. That's the word for this episode. We said it was gonna be a new word every episode. Akin. Or
Akin.
alas. Alas is a word no one uses nowadays.
is akin AKIN?
Yes.
Interesting.
Alas, akin is spelled that way.
Alas, alas, after that, Katie was sort of, she took a moment, if you will, to sort of collect her thoughts. And that's where another guy who we're both very high on went to go console her. And that was Andrew S., who, of course, walked in on night number one, had the fake accent, pretty good accent, may I add. But they sort of bonded. They both had, they both grew up in financially struggling households, and they bonded over that. It was a nice moment, and they had a nice kiss. And then after that, he got the rose.
Well, that's and he. I was just going to get to that to you, but our picks. Andrew was one of my selections, along with Trey and the box guy, James, I believe his name is. Yeah, Andrew. It's like very quickly he's establishing himself as one of the contenders, which is I absolutely love. And yeah, she seems to either have guys that she's really into, as we can see, or really quickly she's like no to these other guys. So that's good that she has her thoughts and she sticks with them, and I appreciate that.
You know what? I really do too. And we've seen in the past, like, I wouldn't have been surprised going back to Cody here if, that had lingered on for another 20 or 30 minutes. And then going into the rose ceremony, there's Cody or Aaron gets picked with one of the final roses. And then it's Cody and some other random guy, and Cody gets the final rose, or if Cody and then there'd be some sort of 2-on-1 or something.
You're right.
Date, something along those lines. But I mean, good for Katie. Who knows what the conversations are actually like, whether, she's talking to a producer and they're saying, oh no, keep him around. And she's saying, no. I'm not doing that. She's being real. She's being vulnerable. She's being honest. Now, before we get to what happens later on in the episode, close to the rose ceremony, when everything went out of control, I mentioned vulnerable there.
Yep.
5 mentions of the use of that made no sense. 5 times vulnerable was used in episode 1 with Katie. How many times do you think vulnerable was used in episode 2?
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was only 5 times this time. I was like, really? I'm going to go with 8. I'm going to say vulnerable, as Tasha likes to say, was said 8 times.
I mean, I might have missed some. I don't think I did. All things considered, I did get my COVID shot the day I watched this. Second shot, by the way. You'll have to see that. And I only counted 4 times.
I love how you go, okay, I'm going to say how many times vulnerable was said, and then you preface it by saying, I might have missed some. So really, basically, I think what I'm trying to say is you have to rewatch the episode again just to confirm with everybody the exact number.
I think it's a great idea. We get a live studio setup of, a live studio, not studio audience, because you can't do that still, but you could have like a Periscope or a Zoom watch party, if you will, with all of our trillions of fans, and set it up and watch it that way. And we could all count together, have a little notepad going. What do you think about that?
I love that idea. And whilst doing that idea, will you be wearing that coat? That's a beautiful coat shirt combo, I must say.
Why, thank you. I could. Now, I'm not sure, like we mentioned in one of our previous episodes, I want to say 14, or 15, talking about how you can't wear white after Labor Day.
Stupid rule. Yep.
Now, I've got a turtleneck on.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost July. Am I pushing the boundaries here? What do you think?
Do whatever the hell you want, man. Whatever makes you feel good, as long as obviously you're not outside. If you're outside and you're scorching hot, well, then maybe that wouldn't be so good for you. But
I'd be
Wear
sweating.
whatever the hell you want to wear, man. I don't understand stupid rules of society. Who comes up with these rules? Who makes the rules that you can't wear a certain clothing now or you can then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Makes no sense to me. Whatever the heck you want to do, Adam, you do you, and someone will love you for that because you're an outstanding human being. How do you think about that? What do you think about that, Meg?
Wow. I'm flabbergasted right now.
Really opening up here or something. Yeah.
Things are getting weird. Anyways, before we talk about, we'll get to your hair here momentarily as well, because that is a mop. That's almost like Barry Melrose a little bit. Oh, look at the side angle here.
Yeah,
Now-
it is. I can't. I've tried to put gel in. I haven't put gel in my hair since like maybe high school. When I told you before, I went blonde and spiked up my hair to freak out my mom, but then she wasn't freaked out, which was disappointing. I haven't put gel in probably like 20 years, and I tried to on the back. And I think it's actually made it worse.
I don't know, man. I think, there's a serious Barry Melrose if you want to give yourself a bit of a mullet, because you mentioned before that's too short for the man bun.
Yes.
Wow.
You know what?
That is quite
There you
something.
go.
Now, enough talk about our own fashion. Let's get back to the episode, the big topic at hand, where they're about to have the cocktail party, and Michael, don't call me Matthew Shinetti, whatever Michael's last name is, was talking about, I didn't get to see Katie this week. He wasn't on any of the dates. It was it felt strange. But then Katie, again, calling her an all-star for the 97th time of this episode, first thing she does, Michael, let's go talk. Boom. And they talk. And then Michael gets a kiss relatively quickly. There's a bond right there. There's something that's really forming between them.
It sounds like you, Adam, are on this journey with Katie, and you're absolutely loving this journey that she's on. However, like I said, you should be on this show, and you should a past guest of the bro ceremony at some point is going to show up on this Bachelor season.
Allegedly.
I think you should also crash the party at some point here, and maybe you did. And we'll just leave it at that for the audience. That perhaps I'm spoiling that Adam Scully is on this current season of The Bachelorette. Only time will tell. But so as the cocktail party did happen there at the end, as we mentioned earlier, Karl mixed things up, as it were.
Karl mixes things up. Now, throughout the episode, Karl, he was making these comparisons to, I got to stay in the game. I got to, have the shot clock is on right now. I've got to do whatever it takes to just stay in the game. Give me one more chance. And then Karl, he also showed he's a sweet talker. He's got game. And Katie was clearly into whatever talk he was throwing her way. But then it seems like they're having a pretty good night. Katie mentioned the guys, if you're not here for me, get the F out of here. But then Karl pulls her aside and dude, who knows how much, I wasn't saying dude to you, I was saying dude to Karl. Who knows how much of the conversation was actually shown between Karl and Katie, where Karl says, there are some guys here who aren't here for the right reasons. And Katie says, who? Can you give me an example? And he's like, no, I can't give you an example. Yeah. Come on, man. What are you doing?
But so here's the thing about that. And obviously, yes, that's a weak move to light the fuse and then, basically leave without, waiting for the bomb to go off. Although I give him slight credit, I suppose, for owning up to the fact that he did actually, he was the one who said it.
Yeah.
But two things could be right, Adam. One, Karl could be a jerk and actually just trying to light the fuse, and he's actually not a nice guy and all this stuff. And two, he might also be right that some guys aren't there for the right reasons. So I understand. It's obvious. 90% of the people watching are going to hate Karl. I find him entertaining because I love villains on these reality shows. But both things can be correct. He could be a jerk, and he could also be right.
You know what, Michael? As they say, only time will tell.
And here's one other thing, Adam. Sorry to interrupt you there. But as you mentioned earlier, how Katie was saying to the guys, if you're a jerk, if you're not here for the right reasons, if you're not here for me, just leave right now. Basically, if you're a jerk, leave. Again, the only thought process of the folly of that is if the guy is a jerk, he's not going to own up to being a jerk, or if he's there not for her and he's there for fame, he's not going to all of a sudden have a coming, oh yeah, oh yeah, you're right, I should leave now. No, if he's a jerk, he's a jerk. He's not going to leave by you telling him that, is what I'm trying to say.
Interesting. That's
You know what I'm saying?
interesting.
Like,
No, I do actually.
It doesn't make any like. Okay, I understand it. If I get it from her perspective, you wouldn't want a guy who's not there for you. But again, if he's only there for the fame, he's obviously not there for you to begin with. So he's not going to be like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm going to bow out gracefully. No chance.
Now, how about when Katie goes, talks to the guys, is clearly pretty emotional, and then pulls Aaron aside. Aaron's like, what me? But then she said, Aaron, I can trust you. And he was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not in the bad books here. So I thought that was another very interesting dynamic. Brandon
also, by the way, people who watch us, unless they work with us, won't know. He also reminds me of an employee at TSN, Brandon. What's his last name again? Musselman? Is that his name?
He's actually no longer an employee at TSN. But.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, sorry. I knew that. But Muzz, I think I find Aaron looks like him. What's that? You don't think so?
He's in Germany now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe he was in Germany. You never know. Maybe he'll be on the current upcoming season. You just never know. But yeah.
Maybe he may or may not join me.
What's that?
Maybe he might or may not join me if I am or if I am not on the season.
Exactly. You just never know. You never know. There's gonna be lots of twists and turns in the season. But yeah, that Aaron guy. Initially, when she said, pull him aside, I was like, oh man, like he's toast. He's in trouble.
Done.
But then no, she actually has a confidant in him,
which is fascinating. So yeah, I'm really curious what's going to happen next because, of course, me being me, I watched the coming up next week, and it looks like, as Karl put, dropped the bomb and things are happening, and it's going to be a wild one. And that all gets going tonight, Michael.
And this is not going to spoil too much for anyone who's watching it.
Earmuffs.
In that preview, they sort of maybe hinted the fact that perhaps what Karl was saying was correct. There are a guy or two that aren't there for the right reason. So again, as I said earlier, both things could be right. Karl can be a jerk, and he could also be right at the same time. So I'm looking forward to that tonight for the episode as Katie continues her journey to find love.
And that journey to find love, yes, 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, ABC, City TV, whether you watch it live, whether you watch it taped, whether you watch it later in the weekend, don't look at social media. What I do know, Michael, is that we are back every Monday, recapping the week that was in Bachelor Nation and looking ahead to that night's episode and all of the spiciness that goes on. Before we go, a couple of housekeeping notes. We each picked 3 men who we like this season. Michael, rattle off your men and what you think.
So Trey, as we both mentioned, Trey just seems like a really, really cool guy. I honestly believe he's going to go quite far. Andrew, who got the rose from Katie, so he looks like he's in great shape. And James was the other guy, the box guy. He seems to be okay. He seems to be doing decently well, but not like a superstar just yet. But at least all 3, in my estimation, as we go into tonight's rose ceremony, I'm assuming there's going to be a rose ceremony.
I would think so.
Doesn't seem like any of them are in trouble. So I like that. What about your guys?
Yeah, my guys were Greg, who obviously had a great episode. Thomas, who got a rose during the group date. So hello. And Connor, where Katie and Connor said they were meant to be. So far, so good. Knock on wood. I'm sitting pretty.
We're both sitting pretty darn good, it seems like. So that almost means like, when's the shoe going to drop? And like in one episode, 4 of the 6 guys are going to be gone or something. But
that's right.
Definitely looks like we made some pretty good picks from the onset.
I like it. So far, so good for the boys here. Michael, again, 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. Can't wait to see what happens next. But before we go, of course, Michael, you are the host of the H-Dog Pod. There's a new episode, a new hot, steamy episode coming up soon. Fill us in on your guest.
Yes. So Gregor Chisholm, used to work with him at TSN many, many years ago. Wow. Now a Blue Jays reporter, used to be for the Blue Jays. Now he actually works for the Toronto Star as a reporter. So we talk all things Blue Jays. We talk about Gibby, how cool he was to work with him years ago. The current iteration of the Blue Jays, just the dumpster fire that is their bullpen, and how to fix that, and some of those types of things. He had a lot of great Jay stories. We talked about that for quite a while, but then we pivoted to a show I know obviously we both love, Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld. And we talked about how great the Curb Your Enthusiasm season 7, where they had the Seinfeld reunion was. And we actually, I think this is a hot take because a lot of people hate the Seinfeld finale. We both agreed that the Seinfeld finale was actually really, really good, despite everybody hating it. I thought it was totally fine.
Are you saying the Seinfeld finale in the Curb season or just the
actual finale of the actual Seinfeld? Everyone hated it for whatever reason. So we actually talked about how great it was. And then we talked a little bit of reality TV, how my favorite show, The Mole, is going to be on Netflix finally. They're putting it back on there, which is not back on there. They're putting it on there for the first time.
Anderson
Yeah,
Cooper.
Gregor and I talked a lot of Blue Jays and then some reality TV and, of course, Seinfeld Curb. It was an outstanding episode. Loved it.
Didn't know Gregor Chisholm worked at TSN. I had no idea about that till now. You can find the H-Dog Pod on iTunes or anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Well, Michael, 19 episodes in the books. You know what next week is, Michael? The milestone Ed Belfour edition, the 20th edition of the Bros Ceremony podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And of course, we'll be posting little snippets, little bits and bites, if you will, of each episode on our Instagram channel. And, whether you're in Equalit or you're in Argentina, we have followers from coast to coast. You like how I came with two different names there?
I like that.
It's coming. But Michael, before we sign off, any closing thoughts or no? I
think, like I said, the closing thoughts to be going into this third episode for Katie's season. So far, I honestly think this is shaping up to be an actual season where it seems the most real, at least in a long, long time of the iteration of this franchise. I hope that she does find love, and I hope she does find love with you, Adam Skelly.
I can't contractually comment about that. So all I'm going to say is it's been a fun edition of the Bros Ceremony podcast. For Michael the Hound Dog Harrison, I'm Adam Skelly. We'll see you next time right here on the Bros Ceremony.